We all rely on farmers and ranchers, but farming is riskier than other businesses out there. Crop insurance helps farmers manage their risk. With crop insurance, farmers put skin in the game by paying premiums and shouldering deductibles. That keeps taxpayers from having to pick up the whole bill every time disaster strikes. Today, about 90% of U.S. farmland is insured, providing $100 billion in protection to more than 130 different kinds of crops. It's a testament to the program's success.
Thank you for joining us for our Agri-Pulse Washington Week in Review. I'm Spencer Chase, joined as always by Agri-Pulse's Phil Brasher, as well as this week by Wisconsin Democrat Ron Kind. Congressman Kind, we appreciate you joining us.
Well, Spencer, Phil, great to be with you as always.
For starters, we know you're fresh off a hearing on the Biden administration's trade policy with U.S. Trade Representative Katherine Tai, and that's kind of where I'd like to start things, is kind of looking more broadly at this trade relationship between the United States and China. A lot of folks had some criticisms of how the Trump administration handled things, specifically its use of tariff authority and things of that nature in its trade relationship with China. But here we sit a couple months into the Biden administration and haven't seen a whole lot by way of change of approach in terms of, there's been a lot of talk about things that they hoped to do with that relationship going forward. But practically speaking, a lot of those duties are still in place. Wondering, are you advocating for any kind of particular change in policy under this new Democratic administration as it relates to China?
Yeah, well, first of all, Spence, it's not unusual for any new administration to do a deep dive, especially on a relationship as important and complex as China. And I've got a lot of confidence in Ambassador Tai. I think President Biden made a great choice in her. She's the right person with the right skill set in the right job at the right moment. And as you may recall, Ambassador Tai used to serve on the enforcement desk against China at USTR. So she's very aware of a lot of the cheating that China, quite frankly, has been doing throughout the years. That's another reason I have confidence in her. But right now, we want to make sure that the pseudo agreement that was reached with China continues to go forward with enhanced agriculture purchases. I think we're starting to see a better market price reaction with corn and beans, soybeans as a consequence of that. We want to continue to move forward, but there's also some very important structural changes, structural reforms that we want and are demanding China to make on IP, on forced tech transfer, on joint ventures, on subsidization of state-sponsored enterprises. And their approach, I think, is going to be more of a multinational rather than a go-it-alone approach, which I agree with. Because when you go unilateral against China, it's easy for them to punch back at us pretty hard and hurt us, especially with agriculture exports. But if you get a coalition of like-minded nations that share our values, I hope that that's going to be much more effective in the type of changes we're demanding China to make.
Speaking of China, Congressman, what are the prospects of the Biden administration re-entering the Trans-Pacific Partnership? What would it take to do that, do you think?
Well, Phil, I'm all for that. I think it's one of the great strategic mistakes our country's making in the 21st century, that we're on the outside looking in on that comprehensive trade agreement in the Pacific Rim. It is the fastest growing economic region in the entire globe. It does not make sense that we're outside that agreement. China's not a part of the agreement, but what's in the agreement are all the structural reforms we're demanding China to make. And I anticipate at some point China's going to want to be in that agreement. So it makes sense for us to find a pathway forward to figure out a way to do it. I think the USMCA agreement now with Canada and Mexico provides a wonderful template of some of the changes that we'll ask to be a part of that agreement. And I think the other countries will be receptive to it. I mean, Canada and Mexico, for instance, are part of TPP themselves. They're also USMCA with us. So that transition would be very easy to make. But somehow, some way, we're working with the Biden administration to figure out a strategy and a path forward to get us back into that agreement.
I'm going to pivot to the climate issue for a minute. The European Union has shown interest, obviously, in a border tax on carbon. The White House has indicated some interest in that as well, that concept. Does this have legs, and what are the implications for agriculture?
Well, I tell you, it's a complicated issue, Phil, as you know well, and you could end up with a tit for tat type of trade war if you don't do this correctly. So it's an idea that I view as being used as a trial balloon, but there has to be a lot more thought, a lot more study going into it as far as practically how it would apply and what the reaction would be throughout the globe.
As a member of the Ways and Means Committee, you not only oversee trade policy, but also tax policy. And there's a lot of interest out in the country on President Biden's proposals to pay for his infrastructure packages. And the one that's getting the most attention, and I'm sure you're hearing about it, is this proposal to start taxing appreciated gains at death, are usually described as ending stepped-up basis.
Yeah.
Are farmers right to be concerned about this? What is the temperature on the committee? There's a number of about 13 House Democrats that raised concerns about this a week ago, saying there should be some full exemption.
Yeah, Phil, I don't think our agriculture producers, our family farmers have anything to be concerned about. You know, many of us reached out to the White House right away, getting clarification. They've been clear that they do not intend this to apply to family farm operations in the country. And we're going to hold them to that pledge. And there's bipartisan consensus on the committee as well. But listen, I am so tired of being a member of Congress talking about infrastructure and never seeing it cross the finish line. And this is the year when we can come together finally and start rebuilding America again. Roads, highways, bridges, inland waterway. I mean, I represent more miles on the Mississippi and more locks and dams than anyone else. That's an important corridor for the movement of agriculture products to lucrative markets. That too is going to be a part of the project, along with broadband expansion in rural America. Talk about the economic impact on our agriculture producers. Being able to deliver high-speed internet connection is crucial to their competitiveness. That too is part of the infrastructure, but we have to pay for it. I'm a fiscal conservative. I believe in pay-as-you-go budgeting rules, and those are tough decisions that have to be made. And I think the Biden administration is correct. There's more that we can be asking from multinational corporations that are setting up shells in foreign countries to avoid taxes and contributing anything to our success. And that's what we ought to be really exploring first and foremost.
Or just to be clear here, now are we talking about there would be a full exemption for farms and small businesses, or a deferral until those assets are sold?
Well, it's my understanding that they are talking about exempting farm operations from any caps or any stepped up buses. We want to make it easy for farmers to be able to hand that operation off to the next generation. You don't want to see that stifled or cut off in any way. So I and some of the other agricultural reps, if you want to call us that, are going to keep a close eye on the details of all this as it moves forward.
Congressman, want to wrap up today talking about those tax provisions, that infrastructure package that you just mentioned in your last response there. We did see the quote unquote Big Four head to the White House this week, have a meeting with President Joe Biden about that plan and about the pay-fors for it. And we heard out of that meeting, Senate Minority Leader Mitch McConnell saying that adjusting the 2017 tax law was going to be a red line for that side of the aisle. So from someone of the perspective on that committee that will be charged with paying for this infrastructure legislation, can that be done without changes to the tax code?
Well, listen, Spence, if they want to be constructive in these negotiations, then they should be coming forward with their own offer and their own plan, including how to pay for it, rather than just being based on user fees. User fees mean to me that our farmers back home are going to get hit hard, and that lower income working families are going to get hit hard and paying for the infrastructure, and they can't afford that. So if they want to be constructive in the negotiations, then put forward a realistic plan and an ability to pay for it. And so we don't get bogged down in that area. And I think it is important that we find a sustainable revenue source that will pay for this. Because if you want to beat China, then let's beat them by being better, being more innovative and more competitive. That starts with a good, sound infrastructure system that we can invest in with the good paying jobs that will come from it throughout our country. That means investing in STEM studies and basic and applied research, including innovative research for agriculture products. It means just being more innovative, creative, and more competitive in China. That's how you're going to beat them in the 21st century, rather than these endless trade wars where it's tit for tat and our family farmers pay the price every time.
But on the point of the infrastructure legislation, being or making too broad of an assumption to say that paying for it is going to be a fair amount easier if it's a smaller package and perhaps doesn't address quite as much from a fiscal standpoint?
I agree with President Biden. We need to be thinking bigger and bolder. I mean, the competition that we're facing abroad right now, we are falling further and further behind every day. And just at the margins isn't going to cut it anymore. We're the United States of America in the 21st century. We should have a infrastructure system representative of a great power like us. And we don't right now, with bridges falling down and roads in desperate state of repair, a lock and dam system that's being held together by tape and bubble gum. Are you kidding me? We're better than that as a nation. So let's come together. Let's find a way to pay for it on a sustainable basis. And let's start rebuilding America so we can outcompete China in the 21st century.
Well, the House Ways and Means Committee has always been one of those committees that members really fight to serve on, and I think our viewers have heard why here in this interview. A lot of different things going on on Capitol Hill, and the Ways and Means Committee is certainly at the intersection of a lot of those different policy areas. And Congressman Kind, we appreciate you stopping by to join us and chat a little bit about what's going on.
Great. Thanks, guys.
For Congressman Ron Kind and Phil Brasher, I'm Spencer Chase. Have a good one.